So what we are talking about today is horizontal translations. And so we have to, first of all, talk about y equals the absolute value of x. When you start with something, they call it a parent graph or parent function, sometimes if it is a function. So what's going to happen is we're going to take this graph and we're going to translate it. We're going to move it in different locations on our x and y axes. Before we can translate it, though, we need to know what does y equals the absolute value of x look like. Just so that you know, whenever you see the absolute value, does anybody know what it looks like before I tell you? It looks like a V is right. So it is going to look like a V, and now we just have to find out what it does. I know it's not going to be the best because we don't have graph paper. I was going to actually pull some out, but I forgot to. But anyways, we have to do an XY chart just to see what it looks like. Whoops, XY. When x is 0, what is y? 0. So we know 0, 0. When x is 1, y is also 1. So we're going to go over 1 and up 1. We have a point there. When x is negative 1, what is y? 1, positive 1. What about if x is 2? Positive 2, because absolute value means the positive of the number. So it's going to be 2, 2. What about negative 2? Positive 2. So I want you to look at those dots, and I want you to determine, and I'll blow it up a little bit so you can see it. I want you to look at it, and what is the dots doing? It's making a V, but it's also, hopefully you guys realize that it's going over by 1, right? Up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1, right? So yes, on both ways it is your slope kind of 1. So what's going to happen is if we can find the vertex, we know that we can go up 1, over 1 from those points, and we don't always have to create this right here. All right, so what we're doing is we're translating this and we're moving it around. Now I'm going to show you the way with the XY chart, and then I'm going to show you the absolute easiest way to do it. But we're going to do one the old-fashioned way. So y equals absolute value of x plus 6 minus 7. All right. So we're going to graph this one. And remember, it's the parent is still the one that we did. All it's doing is, you'll see that all it's doing is moving. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to make an XY chart, but I'm going to tell you what we're going to, and then I'm going to tell you how I knew where I'm going to start. But we are going to start by putting in negative 6. So negative 6, when I put in negative 6, what is my y value? Negative 7. So you put a negative 6 here, you get 0, and then you're negative 7. Then I want to go to my one way. I'm going to go negative 5. All right. If I put in negative 5, so I have, this is what we're doing, so we're going negative 5 plus 6, absolute value minus 7. So we have negative 5 plus 6 is 1, absolute value is 1, and then 1 minus 7 is negative 6. Then we're going to also do 1 the other way. So we started at negative 6, I'm going to do negative 7. So we're changing that to a 7, right? So negative 7 plus 6 is negative 1. Absolute value of negative 1 is 1. And then minus the 7, negative 6. So we have here, and we could keep going, but we have negative 6, negative 7. So we have negative 6, negative 7. Then we had our negative 5 and negative 6. And you had here your negative that. And what's going to happen is it's going to keep going up each way by 1. Because remember, it's a parent. This is just a translation of the one we just did. So it looks exactly the same. All it did is moved. Now, this vertex was right here. I want you to look at the graph or at the function and then look at your point to see how do you come up with the vertex of the graph. So I'm going to take a moment, look at this, and then look at your point where what's the vertex, and how are we going to find the vertex of this. The first thing you do is you look at your absolute value and you say, what makes the absolute value 0? So what would make my absolute value 0? -6. So that's my x. After you make that 0, if you have 0 minus 7, your answer then is your y value. So 0 minus 7 is my -7. So since I knew where the vertex was, that's how I knew what numbers to pick after that. All right? So let's go to our homework. What? Oh. All right. So we have here, what would make our x value 0? 0. And if it has 0, what is your y value at that point? 2. So our vertex is 0, 2. So we're going 0, 2. And remember, it's always going to go both ways up 1. All right, we're going to try one more before we do the other thing. Number 5. Oh, what is the translation? Translation means how did it shift? There's a couple ways you can write it. The easiest would be like horizontal translation. So how from, and it's always thinking from the parent. So how much did it move horizontally? 0, right? It moved 0. The vertical translation, how much did it moved 2. Now negative, you'll just put -2, or if you wanted to, you could go up 2, down 2, but you can do positive and negative would be fine. All right, that's what they mean by translation. What is the translation? All right, I want you guys to try to find the vertex of 5. So just find the vertex of 5. Number 5. The place you start. So always look, the first thing you have to look to find the vertex, you look to see what makes the absolute value 0. So what makes the absolute value 0? 4. Because 4 minus 4 is your 0. Then for your y value, it's what is it at that point? So we have here, this is 0, it would be 2. So you plot that point, 4, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 2, 1, 2. At that point, you could do, if you don't believe me, you could definitely plug in numbers, but since this is my vertex, it goes 1 here, 1 there, because we know what the parent looks like. Yes. Yes. Yep. So what is the translation? How did it move from the center? How did it move from the origin? So horizontal translation is 4. And then vertical translation is 2. Very good. So that is how you do those ones. Now there's only one other thing that, did anybody need that? Did everyone get it? So So those ones, and most of you probably can get those done real quickly. The only other thing we have to talk about is graphing of a circle. Yep. So what would make the absolute value 0? So the no, it's fine. Do you see that, Cody? What could you put in there to make the 0? And then what would be, I thought you said 2. Oh, and then that would be -3. All right. Okay. What would you put in for your absolute value to be 3, 0? So 3, 0 would be 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 1. Just why are we going up in like that? Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest thing, the reason why it goes on everything is because this is its parent. This is what we're moving. We're actually just, it's called a translation. It's just moving this graph. And you could definitely you could go in your, and find out when, and do an XY chart if you wanted to, and do all of the numbers. Put in 5 and find out what it is. However, because we know the parent goes at 0, it's 0. When it was 1, it's 1. When it was -1, it's 1. So what it does is, that's why we graphed this one first, because all it's doing is going 1 on each one, and it's going to keep doing that forever. And so when we translate it, you can go and make a XY chart like this, but it's going to create the exact same thing. All right? All right. Graphing circles. Graphing circles, what we are starting with is x squared plus y squared is equal to the radius squared. And r is the radius. So that means that whatever number is over in this one right there, you have to take the square root to find its radius. The parent of your circle is x squared plus y squared is equal to 1. So its parent, meaning the one that you always start with, sometimes we stretch it and make it bigger, but what we start with, this is the parent graph. Has a center of 0, 0, because there's nothing to x or y. And it has a radius of 1. Bless you. Oops, sorry. All right. So what does that mean? That means if we take our x and y axes, the center is 0, 0, and it goes out 1 in each direction, and it will look like that. That's what our center, well, it'll actually look better than that, but I'm human, so. Well, even though I was, it's still just human. All right, so what will happen though is we will want to go x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. And h is the horizontal, and k is the vertical. I don't know. That's just how it's a math thing. They just decided. All right. So let's do one. The last example. We'll see. You'll see. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It's just, they always use H and K. I don't know why. All right, so what it says is this is the new center, like. So the center is what makes this 0. What makes our x 0? 3. What makes our y 0? -7. And our radius is the square root of this, 2. So the first thing you do is you find your center, so 3, -7. Oh, wait. What makes, this is the equation, this is given. Yep. So then we have 1, 2, 3, and then 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's my center. And then you go out 2 in each direction. And connect the points. So the shift again would be that we would have went right 3 and down 7.